Welcome to the Bradenton area, on the Gulf Coast of Florida, where the easy pace of island life comes naturally in this coastal playground with endless white sand beaches, stunning natural preserves to explore, relaxing vibes all around, and it's a seafood lover's paradise. Plan to stay a while to explore vibrant downtown Bradenton with top-rated attractions like the Bishop Museum of Science and Nature, and discover this friendly community set along the Bradenton Riverwalk, where you'll find lots of surprises around every corner. Come lose yourself in the sun-drenched Gulf Coast and change your reality here in the Bradenton area. Discover Florida's West Coast in Bradenton, Anna Maria Island, and Longboat Key. Learn more at BradentonGulfIslands.com.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon where you are. Welcome to this exciting session panel at the Global Conference on Services and Retail Management. Today, we are going to have an amazing panel on future workforce. Are higher education institutions ready for the needs of future jobs? To moderate this distinguished panel, I would like to invite Dr. Fevzi Okumuş. Dr. Okumuş, welcome.
Good morning. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. And I would like to introduce Dr. Okumuş briefly to you. Dr. Okumuş is the Central Florida Hotel and Lodging Association preeminent chair professor in the Rosen College of Hospitality at the University of Central Florida. Dr. Okumuş has widely published in leading journals, including Tourism Management, Annals of Tourism Research, Journal of Business Research, Service Industries Journal, Management Decision, International Journal of Hospitality Management, and International Journal of Contemporary hospitality management, and many others. He has over 250 academic publications, which is about 150 of them are refereed journal articles and many, many different books. According to Google Scholar, as of September 2020, his publications have received more than 10,000 citations, and he has secured competitive grants, contracts, scholarships, totaling amount of $500,000. He is the editor-in-chief of the International Journal of Contemporary Hospitality Management, which has an impact factor of 5.6 and is one of the leading journals in the hospitality and tourism field. Also, he is serving as the editor of a journal, relatively new journal, but very successful one, Journal of Hospitality and Tourism Insights. He serves on the editorial boards of 26 international journals. He's a frequent speaker at international conferences such as this one. He's also a visiting professor at Sun Yat-sen University, Business School in Guangzhou, China, and visiting chair professor at the National Kaohsiung University of Hospitality and Tourism. Dr. Fevzi Okumuş, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Cihan, thank you very much for inviting me to moderate this session. I can see you took my bio from the UCF webpage, Rosen College, so it reminds me that I need to update that time to time. But thank you for introducing me. To moderate this session, I am looking forward to learn from our distinguished panelists. I particularly want to know what will happen to professors as a future workforce and also journal editors. These are interest to me specifically. We have three distinguished panelists today. They are very, very impressive, each of them. Karen Holbrook is the regional chancellor at the University of South Florida, Sarasota, Manatee. She previously served University of Florida's executive vice president and senior advisor to the president of the USF system. She has had many hats at this university. I am really impressed. Dr. Holbrook has served as interim president at Embry-Riddle, God, I cannot say that, Oro Natural University, the president of at the Ohio State University, senior vice president for academic affairs and provost at the University of Georgia, president of research and dean of the graduate school at the University of Florida, and associate dean for research and professor at the University of Washington School of Medicine. She serves on numerous boards, advisory panels, councils in education and health-related fields. Dr. Holbrook earned a bachelor's and master's degree at University of Wisconsin and her doctorate at the University of Washington School of Medicine. Dr. Karen Holbrook, welcome. I am very impressed, and I want to know how you have accomplished all those things. I'm sure you have a lot to share, but I want to meet you in person to get some advice. I am beyond belief impressed.
I think I need to get some advice from you after listening to your bio. So thank you very much. I'm delighted to be with you today.
Thank you. I
hope I meet you as well.
Thank you. Yes. And Cihan speaks very highly of you, by the way.
Thank you. He is a star. He knows that. He is a star at this university and everywhere.
Yes, you're a star and promoting grooming stars. Okay. So because of you and other administrators supporting Cihan and his team. Our second panelist is Harry Holzer, professor. He's the John Lafargue Jr. Professor of Public Policy at Georgetown University, a non-resident senior fellow at Brookings, and an institute fellow at the American Institute for Research in Washington, D.C. He is a former chief economist for the U.S. Department of Labor and former professor of economics at Michigan State University. He was a founding faculty director of the Georgetown Center on Poverty and Inequality. He is also an affiliate of the Institute of Research on Poverty at the University of Wisconsin-Madison and of the Stanford Institute on Poverty and Inequality. He received his BA from Harvard in 1978 and his PhD in economics from Harvard in 1983. He authored, edited 12 books and many articles, especially on disadvantaged American workers and their employers, as well as on education, workforce issues, and labor market policy. And I looked at his Google Scholar. My apologies for that. He has more than 18,000 citations, which is also impressive. So he has written many things, but people have read and cited and benefited. Again, another impressive panelist. Professor Holzer, welcome. I look forward to listening to you, learning from you and listening to you.
Thank you. Same here.
Thank you. Our third panelist is also a star. Greg Simagard is the Assistant Vice President of Innovation and Business Development at the University of South Florida Sarasota Manatee campus. He is responsible for leading campus business engagement efforts with a focus on creating and enhancing mutually beneficial partnerships with businesses by leveraging the university's resources and innovation expertise. He joined the UCF Sarasota Manatee campus in the summer of 2018. Prior to that, he worked with the Center for International Business Education and Research at the University of Miami Business School, serving as Director of Innovators for the Americans and Experiential Entrepreneurship course that partnered Miami students and professors with their counterparts in 4 Latin American universities. Greg, welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to a great conversation.
All right. This is really impressive. First of all, I want to go out of script, but what will happen to professors? I want to learn this first. Anyway, I'm sure you will answer that, but my first question is, what are your thoughts about the needs of future jobs? Do you believe the future jobs will be very different from what we have today? Dr. Halbrook, I think we can start with you, please.
Okay, thank you. I think the jobs are without a doubt going to be, in every single field, going to be very different from today than they are today. Certainly with all the new technologies, so many technologies, artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchain, all of the other things that you can list, and many of them, Internet of Things, just about everything, all of those are going to play into jobs. And in fact, in many cases, they are suggested that not only will they play into the jobs, that's the best of all, is that they will eliminate jobs. But what they are probably going to do is eliminate the jobs that are very routine and instead replace them with jobs that require both human and technology skills. And so that gets us into what kinds of things are we going to think about for the future and what's going to be important in preparing our students. So not only is it going to be to introduce them to these new technologies, to get them very familiar with them, get them into a place where they're going to create them, but also get them to the point where they are blended with the human traits, all of the soft skills, and the soft skills being called now the 21st century skills or the professional skills, or there are so many different names for them, but they are ever more important now as they blend with the technology. So we've got two things, and that's, I think, what universities are thinking about and need to be. So I'll let somebody else take off from that point.
Professor Holzer, you can be the next, please.
I largely agree with Dr. Holbrook. I want to caution us because there's a lot of variation in the American economy and what different jobs need. We have 145 million jobs in the American economy spread across a very wide range of occupations and industries. And almost every one of those jobs needs some combination of general skills, general cognitive, general social and communicative, and very specific tasks that have to be performed. But the mix of general and specific is very different. As automation proceeds, let's say from the time that students are undergraduates over the next 40 to 50 years of their lives, the technology will change that mix of specific tasks and general skills. The specific tasks will likely change more because that's what we can automate. We can automate, and Dr. Holbrook was exactly right. Things that are considered routine, whether they are routine physical tasks or routine cognitive and analytical tasks, those will be more replaceable more quickly. And economists have another concept, complements versus substitutes. Workers will thrive when they are complementary to the machines, when they can work with the automation, but do a different set of tasks. They suffer when they're substitutes because usually the machines will outperform them in what those tasks. And of course, what we consider routine is going to evolve over time. Today we're on the cusp of driving a motor vehicle being routine enough that robotics and artificial intelligence can handle that. It wasn't routine 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So what's considered routine evolves over time. What the machines can do better than humans evolves over time. But what we want is that people can be adaptable. So you might learn, you said, get a general set of skills. And again, as Dr. Holbrook said, we call them 21st century skills, the foundational skills. That mix of, first of all, digital skills, I think, are important. So you're comfortable working with the machines, and everybody should have some of that. But then a set of critical thinking and problem solving skills, analytical skills that enable people to make complex judgments, social, interactive, communicative skills, even creative skills. I think all of those are part of the 21st century bucket. And I think that will enable students to adapt. So what's routine today will not be routine 10, 20, 30 years from now. But if you have that good bucket of foundational skills, people can adapt. And if one set of tasks that they've learned become automated, they can pivot and learn new tasks. And our job as educators is to set up a system to teach them those foundations, but also enable them over the course of their lifetimes to adapt and learn how to do new tasks when and where they are required.
Thank you. Karen?
There's one quote I want to very quickly put in that I read some time ago that I absolutely love. Randy Bass, Vice Provost for Education at Georgetown. And what he said is, as machines get better at being machines, humans have to get better at being humans. That just says it all to me. I think it's a great quote.
Excellent quote. Yes, Greg?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I'm relatively new to the world of higher education. I've been here about 4 years, and my background is primarily in the business world. So a lot of my remarks will probably be focused on the workforce side of the question. Just a couple of comments. I think the question about needs of future jobs, I think, pre-pandemic, I think this conversation would have been very interesting because I think we've been talking about the traditional comments about automation and how that's changing. But I think we've kind of entered into a little bit of a new world in terms of the acceleration of these changes have been really exacerbated by the pandemic. So I think not only have all the business models been changed as a result of that, but I think there's been a large amount of new innovation that's come about in the last year or so. So I think that's created an element of complexity and some urgency to the discussion about higher education and workforce needs. And I think, to kind of look at the future, dividing the future up into maybe two components. The first one is the short term, maybe the next 12 to 18 months. I think it's, again, the pandemic has had an influence over that. We've gone through things like all the business models have been somewhat disruptive or impacted positively or negatively. Where now, people have moved online, working from home, productivity issues. All these now have come to the forefront. And I think we have to kind of address those in terms of, from an employer standpoint, you can see there are a lot of jobs out there. A lot of employers are looking for employees. I think how we can play into, linking those two together. But one thing I've personally experienced, I know that probably what a lot of employers are looking for right now is immediate needs, looking for specialists, specialized kind of skill sets, not so much the generalists, because they need to respond quickly. And the pandemic has really exacerbated and kind of turbocharged some of the changes. So I think there's a short-term need. And then we go back to what Dr. Holbrook and Dr. Holz were talking about in terms of longer term, in terms of what automation is going to be doing to the workforce, how higher education can play into that. We'll probably talk a little bit more about that, but I see a kind of a blend of the subject matter skill sets that are required. Plus, I don't like to use the term soft skills, but I think it encompasses a lot of what Professor Holzer said too, and we can talk a little bit more about that, which are the soft skills, and blending those two together and how higher education can play into putting those two together to really complement one another so that the employers can be engaged in that process as well. So I'll stop there. I'm sure we'll address that a little bit more in the next set of questions.
Excellent. A professor is always a professor. I like to summarize with your permission. So what you are saying is routine jobs will disappear, will be replaced by artificial intelligence, robots, machines. And there will be new technology, many new apps, technologies. And then what our students need, young people, they need more soft skills, analytical skills, and creativity, and also specialized skill set. And they should be taught, they should learn to be adaptable. And one comment I liked, Dr. Holbrook, you stated a quote: when machines get better, humans need to get better than machines. So from now on, I will start working harder. This is scary. So next question, I want to start with Dr. Greg Smagart, because if you are the last person to speak, they say everything you plan to say, so we need to be fair. What do we need to do to prepare our current students for these jobs that may not exist at all?
Well, I kind of, as an extension of that the first question, I think, right now, again, going back to the pandemic, I think, the world is changing significantly. We're in a gig economy for a lot of our graduates. There are lots of different changes. Technology was coming very quickly. I think that I look at some of the studies that have been done. I think the World Economic Forum said something like a third of the jobs in the future will be impacted by technology. A majority of the jobs in the future don't exist today. So I think it's an interesting to me. I tend to look at this from the business perspective it helps me understand things. I think the higher education is really kind of in this very interesting position of being an intermediary between students and the employment world, and how they navigate that, how we navigate that is pretty critical. And I think that it's very important to understand. I can speak probably more comfortably from the business side, because of the rapid change that's taking place, and it's going to probably accelerate going forward into the future. Businesses themselves are struggling to understand what the future job and workforce is going to look like. So it's imperative that higher education become much more of an integrated partner with the business world, because I think jointly together we will be able to discover what's needed, because I don't think anybody has the answer, and I don't think that anybody, we don't know what we don't know. And I think that it's a little bit more difficult. Businesses move quickly and they will find the solution. We can talk a little bit about what some of the high-tech companies are doing today. They're not going to wait necessarily for higher education either. They have to move forward to survive. And as things accelerate, they will have to accelerate. But because higher education is in this kind of intermediary position, we need to continue to move forward. Probably not as quickly as companies, but probably more quickly than we have done in the past. And it's going to be one of those things where I think it's important. And then I'd like to just talk a little bit more about, what Professor Holzer mentioned before, I think, and soft skills. I think, it's been the soft skills, the critical thinking, creative thinking, complex problem solving, collaboration. All of these skills always come to the top of the list from an employer standpoint. They've done it in the last several years. I think they will stay at the top of the list only because things are becoming more complex and they're accelerating. So I keep using the word acceleration, but I think that's a pretty critical word for this discussion in terms of being able to stay abreast, staying relevant, staying current, and continuing to move forward on that. And then again, for the university higher education system, I think I see a blending of lots of different things taking place, from micro-credentialing to stacking credentialing to taking a look at some of the things that They may need to do with a private-public partnership with companies as well. So I think, to summarize, I would say that things are going to happen very quickly, especially in the short term. I talked about it before, but in the long term, I think we need to stay very, very close to the employment sector organizations and companies so that jointly we can begin to discover and put into place what's required to meet those respective skill sets.
Thank you. Thank you. Professor Holzer?
I very much like Dr. Smogard's emphasis on short-term and long-term. And again, that mix of general skills and specific skills that are in demand is very different in the short term than the long term. In the short term, he's right, it is more the specific or specialized skills that employers need right now. And there's a set of sectors that we often call the high demand sectors. Health and elder care, advanced manufacturing, transportation and logistics, IT, some parts of retail, and even hospitality. And right now they are looking for a specific set of skills. But that specific set will evolve over time. So again, what's the mix of general and specific that we should teach our students? Now, I also want to expand the conversation a little bit because higher ed is partially about four-year colleges and universities, but so only about a third of Americans right now are getting BAs, a little more than a third, maybe somewhere 35 to 40%. The majority of people who go to high ed end up either in community colleges or the for-profit sector. And we want to think about, and the right mix of general and specific might be very different for different kinds of people and across those different sectors. When you look at studies of what helps, for instance, when lower income adults go back to higher ed to get what's essentially some job training, usually they're looking for a certificate program in a high demand field. What actually works well, and again, in some sense, the older people are, the less general liberal arts kind of stuff you can teach them, and the more it has to be something specific. What works the best for a low income adults is to give them what's called sector specific training for a task that's well compensated and in high demand, often in one of those fields I just mentioned, or giving somebody an apprenticeship at a specific firm. So apprenticeships and sector-based training, those things are very specific. And there is always the risk that 5, 10, 20 years down the road, what people learned and what was successful in that short term might be automated. And then they might need a different set of skills. And so again, that's what we're training people for. We want to give them the foundational general skills that hopefully makes them adaptive, plus a set of specific skills that are in high demand right now and that are well compensated right now. But again, with the recognition that if those things change, if those specific skills get automated, that they are adaptable. And of course, this involves having something we call lifelong learning available to as many people as possible. A lot of that lifelong learning is going to be online. And as Dr. Smogard said, the reliance on online has shifted very dramatically in the pandemic, but it's something and it's a problem for me because I spent most of my career studying evaluations of education and training programs and what works and what doesn't work. What might work online might be completely different than what worked before. So that's, so we have to just be ready to prepare people for those changes. And then I'll say one more thing. There's always been, for decades, people debate, should we be doing liberal arts or teaching people these more specific vocational skills? And of course, I think what all of us are saying, people need to learn a mix of those things. A lot of people think the liberal arts are best for giving people those foundational skills, the communication skills, the soft skills. But that's not true for everybody. If you have a terminal liberal arts associate degree from a community college, a lot of employers aren't going to be that impressed, in terms of your ability to do those communication and problem-solving skills. And I'll say one other thing. Our sector, the university sectors, when academics have job tenure, I love having job tenure. It's made my life very pleasant for the last 30 plus years. And the institutions, as nonprofit institutions, they don't always have an incentive to do the kind of keeping up that Dr. Smogard said we all have to do, right? In some sense, you can be just as well rewarded for doing what you've been doing the last 30 years, even on the foundational side. When you don't, for instance, you don't get rewarded for teaching people the digital skills in your liberal arts program. So that's one more caveat that the institutions have to try to be more responsive to what's happening in the business world. Sometimes the states have to create policies that force the institutions to be more adaptable and to have more incentives to be responsive. And that's going to hopefully create pressure for academics like us not to get too cushy and to try to have more of an incentive to keep up with the times as the foundational skills that students need evolve.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Dr. Holbrook?
Well, you guys have been all over the board on all kinds of stuff. So I'm going to pick up on several of the things. Dr. Holzer, one of the things you talked about was very specific skills. And I'm going to say a little bit about skills-based hiring, because there are now a number of companies, particularly even the large companies, that are doing skills-based hiring. And for those kinds of jobs, and these, let me give you an example. Google, for example, has 100,000 scholarships available for students to work in Google with skills-based hiring. And how do you get those skills-based hirings? They are not necessarily college degrees. And a number of companies aren't requiring college degrees anymore, but they want students that are prepared maybe from boot camps or from specific technical schools or even self-taught. So there's a lot of that today that fits a number of jobs, and that's kind of an important thing to do. The other thing I wanted to mention is we've all been talking about higher ed primarily because that's where we all come from. But you really, if you're going to prepare students for jobs that don't exist and for the future, we've got to start much earlier than higher ed and start in the, I would say, even the K through 12. And there are many places that are doing that, which I find terribly exciting. There's a county in Pennsylvania, for example, that's teaching artificial intelligence to kids that are in the elementary grades. And there are even world showcases of students that come and show what they can do in these new skills and technologies. So getting these kids ready early on and getting them into high schools that emphasize research, emphasize practical learning, emphasize things that they're going to be needing in the future is really important. And that prepares them. And then that means our colleges are going to have to step up. Our universities are going to have to step up because some of these kids are coming to universities with a lot of skills that our faculty are not necessarily prepared to teach. You know, it used to be, we used to say, are our students ready for college? I think sometimes we now say, are our colleges ready for the students? It's a little bit different kind of thing. So, and then let me offer a few other things that strategies universities can do to prepare our students. First of all, I think we could have more programs on soft skills. I actually put together a list, and Greg knows about this, many times ago, that of human power skills or soft skills or 21st century skills, and I came up with about 40 of them. So there are lots of these that students don't necessarily learn specifically, but can learn in their courses and need to be pointed out of which ones are so important, because employers know that these are the skills that are very, very important to them. I think we also need to emphasize connections between different curricula. And Professor Holzer, you said that in a way as we were going through with the liberal arts curriculum, but not to have just one dedicated curriculum, but emphasize multidisciplinarity, because we all use multiple skills from disciplines. And of course, everybody knows that disciplines now are merging very much. Something we also haven't talked about, but could, is that supporting entrepreneurship, independence, giving students more control over what it is that they do in their education, and a lot of schools are doing that. So there are a number of things like that that we can take. And then I'm going to finish up and say one of the things we haven't mentioned, and I'll give you some examples. We've talked about soft skills, we've talked about digital skills, we've talked about what might be called infusion skills, which are human and machine skills put together. But there are also a lot of life skills that employers particularly want. And I'm going to read just a few of them: resilience, initiative, motivation, grit, curiosity, tolerance for ambiguity, work ethic, intercultural skills, self-awareness. I can go on and on about these. Perseverance, empathy, lots of different life skills. And those are things also that are very important today as people are looking for jobs and picking employees. So there's a lot of different ways students need to prepare for their futures. And we need to think about those as we are training our students.
Thank you very much.
May I make a comment?
Sure.
Yes.
Dr. Holbrook made some great points. I wanted to follow up on a couple of them. One is another vote for entrepreneurship. I think that given the idea that there's so much uncertainty and so much acceleration, Dr. Holbrook, I think, started out with AI and with job creation, job destruction, and we don't know where that's going to net out. I think a lot of things are changing in terms of, like I said, acceleration and technology. Having our students at least have an introductory course to entrepreneurship in all the disciplines, I think would be a great skill set to have so that people feel comfortable, because if their job is disrupted or their career is disrupted, they can come back and reskill, or they can be involved in lifelong learning. But a lot of people may want to try, starting their own business or working in a small business. So without that entrepreneurship component, I think it's a bit of a barrier for people to do that. So I think higher education, if we could, expand it to almost make it a requirement for students to have at least one introductory course in entrepreneurship early in their career, along with some other high impact experiential courses, I think, which should also make it effective to work with partners, I think would be great. And I think the other thing, which is kind of, I'm not sure where this is going to go, but I think I see in the future maybe some kind of a blending between, as we look at the complexities of technology and how it all kind of comes together, how technical schools and community colleges and universities can come together in maybe a new type of paradigm or ecosystem, and how that works is going to be very interesting. And I think that has some big potential as well. So I just wanted to add that to the conversation.
Thank you. Excellent comments. I'm even myself learning a lot. So wonderful. We have about 10 questions from attendees, but I have 2 more questions. May I ask you to answer each question like in 1 or 2 minutes, please, for the sake of time, so we give our attendees a chance to ask their questions. So we talk about universities preparing our current students. How can universities and other institutions help prepare current employees and managers to prepare for the future jobs? So we talk about current students, but how about the current employees? How can we help them to better prepare them for the future jobs? Professor Holzer, you can start. So just to be fair, you have 2 minutes.
That is perfectly fair. It's a challenging question because current employees and their managers they're not starting in the world of higher ed. Many of them are working full time, and in some sense, your question is, how do we help them adapt to whatever changes? So to me, it does come down to having a better system of lifelong learning. That means that the institutions have to be more accessible. And of course, the good thing about online education is that, at least in theory, it makes education more accessible. People can do it from their homes instead of having to drive to the institution for a 2-hour class at night when you're already tired from a whole day of work. That's the positive side. The negative side, I think, is we haven't gotten that good at online education yet. And the evaluation studies so far, especially for more disadvantaged students and more disadvantaged adults, the online stuff doesn't work as well for more disadvantaged people. So I think that's our challenge. Our challenge is for the academic sectors, and again, whether it's the colleges and universities or the community colleges, to generate accessible and sometimes bite-sized programs that will be accessible to the students. So either when they think a disruption is coming that might make them obsolete, or if they just want to advance more. It's another thing we learned in the pandemic is how lousy a lot of these jobs are for a lot of people, what we call the essential workers, how low their pay is and their benefits and the lack of paid leave. So they might want to update. So creating a world that is accessible to them, where they have the knowledge and and it's going to take serious guidance to help people make the right choices. And a lot of these institutions do guidance very badly. The community colleges, for instance, can't afford to do guidance really well. So the guidance has to be there. And your question also asked about how we can help managers as well as current employees. That's not something we think about a lot. And I think it's a very nice, good, important issue to put on the table, because if we can talk to managers and make them aware, then maybe the managers can help people take advantage of the opportunities. And I'll say one more thing, the technologies are not so determined. I think I'm going over my time limit. It depends a lot on how technologies are implemented, and employers and managers make choices. Do they want to help their current employees adapt with some kind of training, on the job training or otherwise, versus do they just want to completely replace them? And maybe having stronger ties between management and the education sector will make them more sensitive to how they can help their current employees adapt and implement the technology in a way that makes them more accessible. Sorry for taking.
Thank you very much. Greg, you have 2 minutes.
I'm gonna give you one example, which I think something I'm personally involved in on our campus is critical thinking. I think when you talk about how higher education can work with the business community or organizations, employers to reach out and work together. One of the things that I always hear from the business community is even my current employees, not only just graduates, but my current employees, soft skills. As things are changing and accelerating, I need to have my employees keep up as well. And so one of the areas to do that is critical thinking. I like to refer to that sometimes as being able to connect the dots, sometimes with trends and changes that are taking place. Unfortunately, what's happening is that those dots are changing and they keep moving. So to be able to track all of that by being just an employee in an organization that's changing rapidly in and of itself is difficult. And companies can't keep up with that as well. So one of the things we did in our campus was I've worked with our critical thinking team, and last year we did some certification workshops for the community organizations to do day-long workshops on critical thinking, how to apply it in your workspace, and got great feedback. We're going to continue to expand that, but again, we talk about how to address situations, how to critically think, how to solve root cause for the problems. I mean, I'm not going to go into the critical thinking aspect, but I think certification, looking at expertise. Jihan, who's been involved in putting this conference together, has done some outstanding work with the Muma College of Business and putting together some leadership training online, which has been phenomenally successful, which is, again, another way higher education has been reaching out to the business community. So I think there are a lot of things we can do to help move along. And again, but it requires being in close partnership with the employer base.
Excellent. Karen, you are next, please.
Okay, I thought of a couple things. One is when I thought of the question, I thought of how do managers, or would you say employers and managers, prepare for future jobs? I was thinking of future jobs and future employees, and I thought one of the things that managers and employers need to do is understand where the new employees are coming from, what they want out of the job, and it helps them think about what their job should be in the future and how they change. But what are these students that are coming out of college, what do they value? And one of the things that there are a lot of things that they value, but work-life balance is a big deal right now for this generation. Work flexibility, salary, schedules, health insurance, and retirement benefits. Those are all things to think about. But most important, and in a recent study, actually in 2021 from the Harvard Business Review, reported that 90% of employees would be willing to exchange a percentage of their salary for greater meaning at work. So developing purpose in the jobs and developing a reason for people to be there, a culture and values, but more of a purpose in what they are doing is something that they would like to do. So as Greg has said, engage in high impact practices, have an opportunity to grow, acquire, new skills and advance and have mentorship and collaboration at work. In other words, they want to see their jobs grow. And so managers and employers have to think about what it is that this new generation coming in needs. And then I'm going to give you an interesting example. United Arab Emirates, as you may know, has made artificial intelligence one of the main things in their workforce right now. And one of the things they're doing is they're putting in place workshops, panels, and different kinds of work groups for employers to bring artificial intelligence into the workforce overall. So what they're trying to do is prepare the public and private sectors that are already working in their enterprise. So they have what they call is Think AI. And it's a series of all of these things that are helping employers adapt to the new environment. So I think that was kind of interesting to have the government involved, not the higher education, but government involved in preparing the workers for the future.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. I have the last question, but this is a 1-minute question. All right. So the time limit is 1 minute. We have a lot of social media platforms, and we see academics, undergraduate students and graduate students, even employees, employers, post their achievements, recognitions, and everything. Like you may have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or LinkedIn. How do you feel about promoting your achievements on social media platforms, from LinkedIn to Facebook, and so forth? Just brief comments. You can, whoever would like to take, the floor is yours.
I'll just say quickly, I don't know the answer because I don't know the extent to which different employers look at those things when they're making hiring decisions. Now, I know that some employers use Indeed and other websites like that are specific hiring websites. So I don't know how much that matters, but I'll also say one other thing. There are people are trying to make the online labor market better than it is right now. There's a wonderful organization called Opportunity at Work that is really trying to think, how can we get beyond the degree, employers just looking at the degree, so that employers and workers can interact with each other over the skills they need and the skills they have. I'm hoping that this online marketplace gets better over time, and it may not be workers. I mean, LinkedIn is one example. There may be others. As that online system evolves and gets better, I'm hoping there's more opportunities for workers to showcase what skills they have rather than just their credentials.
Okay. Excellent. Karen, Greg, do you have any comments on that?
I'll just jump in very quickly and say, I don't think you have to decide whether they should or shouldn't because they're already doing it. And that's something we have to know. And the only thing I would say is, if that's the kind of thing you're going to do, be very careful of what you put out there, because with artificial intelligence, every HR person can screen the social media and pull out what you say. So I would just say caution.
I would agree with Dr. Holbrook completely. That's exactly what I would have said.
All right. Excellent comments, answers. Now I think that we can give an opportunity to our attendees to ask their questions. The first one is, do you think we are moving towards a situation where students may pick up different courses from across disciplines rather than specific subjects in disciplinary boundaries?
I think they'll take what the universities tell them they need to get certain degrees. So in some sense, maybe it's up to the institution to sort of widen the boundaries a little bit, so that if you're looking for a degree in STEM, some STEM field, that a wider range of things count towards what counts. So students have discretion whenever they have free courses, the discretionary courses they can take. And I think the institutions define those boundaries, and maybe they should define the boundaries more broadly in some cases.
This also leads to a question whether universities should be more flexible if students want to move from one field to another field. Yes.
This is a tough one, because some universities, and I would say my own, have very rigid boundaries right now for degrees that do not allow a lot of flexibility. And I think that flexibility is really what enhances an education. It's not just, we're not just going to school, I don't think, for a career, but an education. And there are so many things that people are interested in. But we have requirements that are put in place by the state that you cannot have extra credits. In fact, you're penalized for graduating with extra credits. And so you stick to a very narrow path. I think what has to happen is much of the education goes on through, as Dr. Holzer has said before, it goes on throughout your lifetime, because you do become more and more interested in different things as your career goes on and as life goes on, and you have to pick them up later. So I guess your college education gets you to a certain point, but the rest of your life brings in education and those things that you really care deeply about.
Yeah, I think I would just quickly say, I think, a cross-disciplinary, multidisciplinary approach makes you, very, very effective from the point of view of an employer. However, I think that's one of the challenges for higher education is, well, how do you blend the two?
Yeah.
Making sure you get your requirements for the skill set that you're being trained for, but have access to some other multidisciplinary opportunities, because I think it gives you different perspectives. And I think companies in general may find that pretty desirable when they're looking for future hiring.
When you're asked to speak on this panel, we promise to ask you easy questions, but I apologize. I'm asking all these difficult questions, and there is one more. Will we need 4-year degrees in the future? Is it time to replace this long commitment to shorter certificate-based education? And just to that, I have my own students. When I teach at the University of Central Florida's Rosen College of Hospitality Management, some of my students ask me, Professor, open all the modules for 15 weeks. I want to finish in 2 weeks everything. Should I allow that student to finish everything in 4 weeks, 3 weeks? Or should we allow students to finish all their degrees in 2 years? Anyway, many questions in under one umbrella. Karen, perhaps you would like to take this one?
Well, I don't know that you need 4 years. I really think you can go whatever pace you want to. I did an undergraduate degree in 3 years because I just doubled up a lot of courses so that I would get done early and could go on to the rest of my education. So I don't know that, but I'm going to add one thing. Whether you need 4 years or not, I don't know. I think 3 years is fine. I don't know whether 2 years. I really don't know that. But I do think that there are a lot of students that are getting great value out of the certificate programs, because that enhances what it is they're learning in the classroom and gives them a specific skill base. And so I think we're all trying to add more certificates to our degree programs. And as I said, I talked about skill-based preparation. I guess it depends on what your goals are and what it takes to meet your goals. So that was not a great answer, but I don't know about 4 years specifically. Somebody else can pick that up. Do better.
I'll jump in. I'll jump in at this point. I want us to be very careful. The 4-year degree is not obsolete, because if you look at what labor markets value in a statistical analysis, say the value of a 4-year credential relative to 2-year or just the high school, that value went up dramatically in the late 20th century, and it has not come down. Employers put a lot of stock. They get sent a signal right now by the 4-year degree that makes it something. And economists who study this stuff, and you say, well, if you have a 4-year degree, is it the degree per se, or just the underlying bunch of skills and credits you've attained? The degree itself is what we call the sheepskin effect. Is the sheepskin itself valued, or is it just the individual stuff you learned? And the answer is that the labor market still rewards the sheepskin. It does. And I'd be very reluctant to tell people that doesn't matter. Now, as the labor market evolves, 20, 30 years from now, as that sort of digital marketplace, online marketplace, gathers more steam, as a lot of us said before, it might be a labor market where it's easier for people to sell the more specific things. And by the way, it depends who we're talking about, right? If you're talking about young people coming out of high school whoever can finish the 4-year degree, that's great. A lot of people can't finish the 4-year. A lot of people have trouble finishing the 2-year degrees. In community colleges, the completion rates at community colleges are under 40%. So we need to give people this wide range of options where certificates are going to be perfect for some young people and certainly for adults coming back. But the 4-year degree right now is not obsolete. It sends an important signal, and we want people to know that too.
Okay, thank you. Greg, do you want to make any comments?
Yeah, I think I'll just add on to Professor Holzberg's comment about employers. I think employers will help us determine the answer to that question. I think as time goes forward, I think Dr. Holberg alluded to the IT Google certificate program. Sometimes if the employer says I'm looking for these skill sets and I don't think I need a 4-year degree for that, therefore either the university has to shorten the lifespan of getting that skill set, or we're gonna do it ourselves. So that's something to consider. But I also agree that the 4-year certificate graduation is here to stay. I think it's very important. But again, I think we need to stay very close to the employers over the next 2 to 5 years to find out where we're headed on this, because they're going to have a pretty good say, because they're kind of the end user, the recipient of the product that's being developed, if you want to look in business terms. And so I think it's important to be flexible and stay close to the labor market.
Thank you. So we have several other questions. So this is the next one, but one of you should answer and you can decide. This is another difficult question. Community colleges are moving towards being a 4-year degree college. Don't you think this is defeating the purpose of community colleges being access point? Thank you. Yes.
I know in Florida, I know that what were traditionally 2-year colleges, a lot of them are moving in the 4-year direction. I don't want to say it's a mistake, but in some sense, different institutions have different roles, and I'm not sure a lot of those 2-year institutions will be as good at generating the 4-year degree. Maybe if they focused on improving what they do and improving the transfer process to the 4-year places, maybe in some cases that might be at least as good an option.
Thank you. Yes, the next question is, what about the new behavior trends of our students? They are used to represent now in 140 characters. We are fighting to keep their attention even for 10 minutes. I don't agree with 10 minutes. I will say 3 minutes, 2 minutes. Does our education model need to change?
Well, I think the education model has changed. It started a long time ago with the flipped classroom, and I think there are a lot of different ways of preparing instruction now so that students are more engaged. I mean, I think about how much video is being put into everything, because video seems to attract and teach in a very good way. But I do think faculty are learning and are doing a lot more to keep attention. And I think people understand this, and the model is changing in what people are doing with students. Okay. Lots more practical, lots more experiential learning, lots more hands-on kind of things than we've ever done before. And it keeps people really doing something in the real world and real life experiences while they're learning.
Okay, they asked my question, the next one. What is the role of artificial intelligence in higher education? Do you believe that artificial intelligence can replace professors, right? Perhaps in a couple of years' time, you don't need a moderator of Professor Okumus. A robot will moderate the session.
I'm hoping that doesn't occur very quickly, at least not in my career span. I think there are tasks we do now that robots may be able to do reasonably well. They will not anytime soon be able to engage in a Q&A session like we're having right now, where I think it requires a degree of judgment, a degree of cognition that I don't think robots will be able to. But again, it's what roles will they be able to play at what points in time, and then how does faculty focus more on what we do better, like what we're doing right now, I think.
Yeah, I think AI has a huge role in higher education in so many ways, but mostly in services, in providing support to students like chatbots and lots of things like that. And that's extremely valuable because it takes away, it gives a lot of information with a lot less time and a lot fewer people involved. And even in learning, I think there's a lot of area for AI to help. Students can move faster through a curriculum and can be tested in a variety of ways. But I don't think anything replaces the human-human interaction. And I think that's how people get stimulated and excited about what they do. And I can't imagine being very excited to learn from a robot that doesn't have the experience that a real professor does.
All right. I think you answered this next question as well, but let me read. Why is it when we talk about the future, by default, we discuss technology? Do you think undermining the importance of human, social, non-technological skills may have any problems?
I'm going to jump in fast and sorry, Dr. Holzer. I think human interaction becomes even more important with technology. So I'll just stop with that. I think it's not undermining it, it's emphasizing the need for it.
I agree.
I agree too.
Yeah, I agree.
Without technology, it is becoming impossible to communicate with some students, also even with our kids. I think it's challenging. All right. Whew. What are your thoughts about massive online open courses? Are they to replace traditional education, maybe as means to react to changes quickly? I think Professor Chobanol is asking this question. I think.
Yeah. I would just say it's part of an evolving ecosystem. I don't think it replaces anything. I think it just becomes one more tool in the toolkit. And how it's going to evolve going into the future, again, will kind of depending on the end user. If there's a lot of demand for that, it will expand. But it's just part of the expanding ecosystem.
Okay. We will have the last question, and then I will give you each of you a last chance for your last words. All right. A pandemic has shown to us that online education can be high quality. I don't agree that online education is yet high quality, by the way. It increases access, true. Is this a trend that many majors will move to 100% online only? That's a very sensitive, difficult question, and I don't want all degrees online, by the way, personally. Yes.
I think all three of us have agreed, actually all four of us have agreed that we're not ready for a world where everything's 100% online. The quality of the online stuff may not be good enough yet, and what you get out of an interaction, if we're teaching people to use these skills, these foundational skills like critical thinking and good communication, I'm not sure all of that can be done purely online. There will be mixes of online and in person, and I agree with Greg. The right mix will vary, and the right mix will evolve over time. I don't see any time soon where everything in every situation will be online, and I don't think that would be best for students.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much. And Gray, I mean, I've moderated many sessions. I spoke on many panels. I will say this is one of the best, if not the best, panel I have ever attended, moderated, or participated. Very important topics, great panelists, and great discussion points. Even I learned myself. And when this video is available, I will ask my students and my daughters to listen. I don't know whether they will watch it, but at least I can recommend. Dr. Holbrook, 10 seconds, 20 seconds, your last word, please.
I think my last word is just to say thank you. And I, too, thoroughly enjoyed the conversation among everybody. So thank you very much for enlightening my day as well.
Thank you. I would love to come and meet you in person one day. Okay,
please
when
do.
This craziness work. Professor Holzer?
Same thing. This has been a lot of fun. I have certainly learned from the comments of the panelists and the questions asked. Thank you for including me, and thanks to all of my co-panelists, because it was really an enjoyable and informative conversation. So thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Greg Shimoga.
Again, thank you very much for the opportunity to participate. As I said at the beginning, I thought this would be a great conversation. It turned out to be an outstanding conversation, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. We would like to thank our panelists for this wonderful panel and sharing their comments. And I hope this will help universities, students, and current and future employees and employers. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.